TikTok. Just going live now. Going live on Instagram. If you give me 1 second. Okay, good morning. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of July, and my name is Kyle. I'm here to give you the daily AI news and updates, as well as answer questions coming in live via the live stream right now. So I'm going to jump straight into the news, go through a few of the topics that are trending today, and then switch between that and answering your questions live. If you are watching this later on YouTube, I do the live streams every morning at around 10 a.m. London time if you want to hop on and ask questions. Or alternatively, leave your questions below the YouTube videos, and then I'll be able to get back to them later in a live stream. If you are currently watching on the live, then you can find everything on YouTube, split up, nicely time-coded, so that you can find the topics that you are interested in. And there's also a newsletter which comes out every day, which again gives you the time codes, gives you the segments, and allows you to jump straight to the information. So this is a new project that I've been doing for a couple of weeks now, and will continue to do as long as it is valuable for people. And hello to everyone joining in the live stream right now. So a couple of bits of news today, nothing huge, but things trundling along, some UK and some EU news, which is unusual. For the last week or so, everything has been about Grok and Elon Musk and America. So it's nice to have a little bit of movement in the UK and the EU. Nothing that exciting, but let's cover it anyway. So the first one up was on the front page of the BBC this morning. OpenAI and the UK sign a deal to use AI in public services. Fine. There's very little actual substance here, but we have a technology secretary right now called Peter Kyle, who is very pro AI, and he wants to get it more into the civil service and government as well in order to help with efficiencies. This seems to be part of that drive. This BBC article is quite negative. I mean, it starts with a very scary looking image at the top, a bizarrely scary hacker style image. And then at the bottom, it's also kind of reminding us that this technology has come under fire for giving false information, bad advice, etc., and reminding us that it is trained on unlicensed material. So the BBC, as always, are continuing to be very negative about this. I don't blame them. If you are a journalist right now, AI is an existential threat. So that is what it is. But the actual subject of this article, basically, there's an agreement between the UK government, the Labour government, and OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, to develop an information sharing program and to develop safeguards that protect the public and uphold democratic values, which all sounds very good. OpenAI will expand its London office, which currently employs 100 people, which is not very many. I think OpenAI they have about 6,000 staff members. Don't quote me on that. I think it's about 6,000. So 100 in London is tiny. That should give you an idea of the UK's contribution to this at the moment. And this particular signing, what they've done is a commitment. The commitment is a statement of intent rather than a legally binding deal, which sets out the goals of the partnership between the UK government and OpenAI. So basically, UK government and OpenAI, the creators of ChatGPT, have said, yeah, we're going to do something together. That's kind of it. So our government here in the UK are making lots of noise about using artificial intelligence. I don't know how that's actually going to pan out. They've been talking about this for months now. I'd like to see something actually happen rather than just statement of intents. Sam Altman and Peter Kyle have dined together in March and April of this year. Okay, cool. So we'll see if anything comes of this. But right now, the UK economy is basically stagnated. They're announcing proudly like, oh, the economy grew by 0.1 or 0.2% last month. Like, well, that is basically dead in the water. It's a rounding error. So potentially AI could help to revitalize, but it's going to require more than statement of intents and saying, hey, we're going to do some AI. We need to see some actual projects and some actual money being spent on this as well. So this kind of gives you an idea of the seriousness of in which AI is being talked about in the UK. I was actually at an event yesterday. Where is it? There it is. Google. I was over at Google. There's my little I don't think anyone can use this now. This is a dead security pass, but I was at Google on a panel discussion talking about artificial intelligence with a bunch of entrepreneurs in the room as well, and then at an event afterwards, meeting entrepreneurs, meeting people who are building startups. And AI is the hot topic. But a lot of the money is currently flowing into US startups. So people here are struggling to raise money because we just don't have the AI infrastructure. We don't have the big names in artificial intelligence anymore. So a lot of the entrepreneurs and startups I was talking to, yeah, they may be making a start here in the UK, but their goal is to go to San Francisco. Their goal is to tap into the American market because that is where the money is in artificial intelligence. So thank you again, Google, for hosting, and yeah, lovely offices, by the way. Hopefully, the UK can become more serious in how we treat AI. The UK used to be at the forefront with companies like DeepMind. That's been lost. We still have huge reserves of very, very smart people. It's just at the moment they're being pulled away to America because that's where the work is being done and that's where the high salaries are being paid as well. So we will see how this pans out. I'm going to hop over to some questions because I see a few. You're a ray of sunshine. Well, that's a nice one. Not a question, but I'll take that. That's very kind of you. I had a haircut yesterday, so I look less scruffy because I've just spent the last week or so in a chateau in France, which sounds very fancy, but it was actually extremely cost effective. It's about 50 euros per person, very, very cheap. But I was being a bit of a bohemian last week, and now I am tidying up so I can go and talk at Google because I can't look like a scruff. Do I prefer O3 or Grok 4? Asks Ben. So for me personally, O3. I think Grok 4 is impressive in what they have done. So XAI have only been around since I think March of 2022 or 2023. Let me check that. XAI founded 23. I'm so bad with dates. So XAI has only been around since March of 2023, so just over 2 years. In that time, they've done a huge amount of work and they have managed to catch up with the frontier models. I don't believe, and a lot of people do not believe, that they've managed to surpass OpenAI. They haven't surpassed Anthropic. They haven't really surpassed Gemini, but they've built something that's very good. They've managed to become a contender in a very short amount of time, which I think is impressive. Whether or not they will surpass the other frontier models, we will see. They're certainly throwing a lot of money at it with their superclusters. But right now, for me personally, and talking to other people in the space, not many people are actually using Grok on a day-to-day basis. And most people are still building with and using OpenAI models. So ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini. They tend to be the big models. So Grok's really interesting, but not particularly useful yet. So for me, I prefer O3 over Grok 4 for reasoning tasks, certainly. Although I'm a Claude maximalist. I use Claude for most things, apart from coding, where I will use Gemini 2.5 Pro. Okay, so the next piece of news, if I can switch back to there we go. Next piece of news is, speaking of Grok, is Elon Musk. He has announced, well, he's been announcing things all last week. He's been very busy, but the newest news is that they're going to make a baby Grok, which is going to be an app dedicated to kid-friendly content. So basically, it sounds like they're making a chatbot, an AI avatar, which is going to be child-friendly. So their current AI avatar, Annie, ANI, is not child-friendly. It's extremely not safe for work, and you can have sexually explicit discussions and talks with that particular chatbot. So it is not safe for kids at all. What they're talking about is creating a version of this called Baby Grok, which will be for kids specifically. So yeah, I mean, Elon Musk says a lot of things, and these things do happen. It would be interesting to see whether this is actually an AI model that does have safeguards that make it good for kids. This could be a really positive thing because you could build an AI avatar which acts as a tutor and a teacher, and it helps to guide education. There's some really cool technologies here which could be useful, especially for helping kids to learn. I don't know whether Grok and XAI and Elon Musk are necessarily going to be the best people to build that model. I'd rather see like an education focused company or someone like Anthropic working on this. But XAI and Elon Musk, they're the ones who've stepped up and they're building this. There are also bigger questions here of use of AI for very young people. So, I mean, this is an age-old question of how much TV should your child be allowed to watch? That's what used to be discussed back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And then it was how much time should your kid be allowed on the internet in the 90s, 2000s. And then it was, when do you get your kid a smartphone? When should they be fully connected to the internet? These are age-old debates that parents have to have. And parents need to work out with their kid when is the right time to give a child access to a particular technology. We are just going to have to work that out again with artificial intelligence. And as with any technology, it can be used well and it can be used poorly. So if you give a kid access to YouTube, they could watch educational videos and learn, and things like Khan Academy, fantastic resources. Things like Crash Course History, fantastic resources. But at the same time, a kid can just watch gaming videos. I'm not saying one is inherently better. Well, no, I kind of am. I am saying one's inherently better. But something like YouTube, a platform like YouTube, gives access to both of those types of content. And if the kid is given free rein to choose how to use it, they will tend to go towards the more entertaining rather than the more educational. So again, this is a debate that's been had about TV. It's like, okay, TV is fine if you're watching documentaries and you're learning, but not necessarily if you're watching cartoons. That's something that's been talked about or discussed for decades. We're going to have something similar with AI. So AI chatbots can be used to learn, can be used for education, but will the kids do that, or will they just chat and hang out with the AI bot? And is that inherently a bad thing? I don't know. I do not have the answers, but it's something that will be discussed. And bringing baby Grok into the world is going to speed up that discussion. It looks like, so from the wording that Elon Musk has used, it looks like it will be a standalone application. So he said, we're going to make Baby Grok at XAI an app dedicated to kid-friendly content. So it means it won't be necessarily the same app. It won't be built into the X ecosystem, but will be a separate app, which will be presumably gated and safe for children. We'll see. We'll probably have it out in the next couple of weeks. But yes, I'm not 100% convinced that they're the best people to be bringing AI into the lives of the world's children, but we shall see. Let me switch over to questions quickly. Will there be any apprenticeships in AI for London? Says ABC with teacher Kim. So is this connected to the news of ChatGPT, sorry, OpenAI signing a deal with the UK government? I would hope so. So the only problem is the scale of AI projects in the UK are very, very small. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, Meta, the creators of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, they gave some money to the UK government, and the UK government is now allowed to spend that money on hiring AI experts to help with AI in government. But the amount of money that was given was £1 million. Sorry, $1 million. At the same time, Meta are signing $100 million bonuses with engineers over in America. So they gave the UK government like $1 million. Like, here you go. It's not even a table crumb. For them, they probably spend more on toilet paper in a year than they've just given the UK government. Not that they need to give charity to the UK government, but the problem was the way our government and our news responded to it. Like, this was manna from heaven. Like, oh wow, we're going to use this and we're going to power ourselves into the future of AI. No, not with $1 million. AI is being fought on the scale of billions and trillions. $1 million doesn't do anything. So if there are going to be apprenticeships, My concern will be that the scale of the projects that are put together here in the UK will be too small. I think there'd be a great thing to do, teaching people about AI, teaching people how to build artificial intelligence, how to build with AI as well. I just don't have the confidence that it will be done on a large enough scale to have any impact in the UK. They will do it, have 30, 50 apprentices, make a big deal about it, put lots of press releases out, have award ceremonies, whatever it is. So it looks good, but it doesn't necessarily have any meaningful impact. That's my concern, because so far that seems to be how a lot of the AI is being treated in this country. I hope it can change, but right now it seems to be lip service. So I imagine if there are AI apprenticeships, they'll be exactly the same. It will be lip service for a very small number of people with very minimal impact. If anyone is from the UK government and wants to hop into chat or wants to get on a live and talk about these kind of things, if Peter Kyle is out there watching this kind of stuff, then absolutely, let's talk about it. I'd love to hear what's actually happening. I would love to be wrong here. I just don't trust at the moment that anything substantial will be completed. So it's a great question. I do not know if there's any AI apprenticeships right now. If there are, and if anyone knows of any, please tell us, so that I'd love to be able to signal boost that and tell people about it. So I was at this event yesterday, the one at Google, and I was talking to a lot of young people, 19, 20-year-olds, and they are learning to use AI in the way that everyone else is. So they're having to work it out themselves, basically. There are no training provisions in universities. There are no training provisions made by the government. So people are just kind of having to work it out themselves, which is fine. I mean, that's how I did it. I'm sure that's how most of you did it. But if we could speed that up and help younger people work out AI technologies faster, that's going to put our economy and society in a better place moving forward. Yeah, but that is not currently being done. So the next big one is, okay, so back to Meta, and this time we're going to leave the UK. We're going to go to the EU. So the EU's, right, let me get this right because it's a lot to say. The EU AI Act is coming into play, I think in August. Let me find the exact date. EU AI Act. Effective August 2025. I don't know when in August. Here we go. The 2nd of August 2025. So in a couple of weeks. This is a document, an act that they've been drafting, I think, for the last 2 years, for a very long time, because it takes a huge amount of time to draft it and then to get everyone to agree upon it. So that is coming into play in 2 weeks. And I'm sure there's a lot of fanfare, a lot of excitement in the EU about this regulation that they're putting out. So recently, Meta have said they will not sign the EU's AI Code of Practice. So this is slightly different to agreeing to the act itself, because, well, if you don't agree to the act, then you'll get fined if you operate in the EU. But this is a code of practice, which is basically saying, okay, I agree to these general terms. I don't think it's necessarily legally binding, but it's, let me read through here. It's basically a show of good intent that, oh, we agree with the guidelines that have been set out here, and we will act accordingly, and we will act well moving forward. Basically, Meta said, no, we're not signing that. So here we go. Europe is heading down the wrong path on AI. Meta's Chief Global Affairs Officer, Joe Kaplan, wrote in a LinkedIn post. This code, the Code of Practice, introduces a number of legal uncertainties for model developers, as well as measures which go far beyond the scope of the AI Act. And then Thomas Regnier, a spokesman for the European Commission, said AI model providers that opt not to sign the Code of Practice will still have to comply with the AI Act and might be exposed to more regulatory scrutiny. So these are two different things, the Code of Practice and the AI Act. The AI Act will apply to everybody operating in the EU regardless. This Code of Practice is basically a way to say, okay, I agree with what you're doing, and I agree, I will comply. You don't have to sign it, but if you do not sign that code of practice, then they're going to make sure you are watched very, very carefully under the AI Act. So it's going to be messy. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks. A lot of companies have started to push back on the AI Act. So here we go. Meta is the latest tech giant to criticize the push to regulate AI. Earlier this month, chief executive of European companies, including Mistral, which is a French, probably the biggest AI company we have in Europe, Mistral AI, ASML Holdings, and Airbus signed a letter asking the Commission to delay enforcement of the law, saying that overlapping and complex regulations were preventing the EU from becoming an AI leader. So basically, I believe, and I don't think this is very controversial, AI is now a two-horse race. We have the USA on one side and we have China on the other side. The EU basically removed itself from the game a couple of years ago by pushing forward with this EU AI Act, saying we're going to be the best regulators, we're going to come up with the best rules for AI. The problem with this kind of regulation is, as I mentioned, they started running it 2 years ago. AI has changed a lot in 2 years, a lot. There's no real way around this. Whatever policies are created, whatever laws are written, will very quickly become defunct because of the speed of artificial intelligence, because AI is just moving faster than anything else. So the big problem here is that any rules that are put down may inhibit companies from growing in the EU. And that seems to be the case already. Most companies are, well, going and setting up in San Francisco for this reason, because they don't want to be hit by these regulations moving forward. So in a weird way, the EU AI Act doesn't really matter, because there isn't much of an AI industry here in Europe anyway. It's just going to affect the American operators and the Chinese operators probably less. The American operators acting in the EU, and it's going to make it very unattractive for them. And so already when ChatGPT releases a new feature, the last people to get it is always the EU, because they have to go through additional hoops and hurdles. We might get to a point where ChatGPT releases a feature, let's say like extended memory, and it just cannot comply with the EU AI Act. And therefore, a company like OpenAI will just say, okay, users in the EU will not get this feature. I think that's probably where we're going to go. We already see huge delays on the rollout of features compared to America. I think at some point they'll just say, okay, you don't get this, which will just incentivize European users of AI to use VPNs, switch their accounts over to America. We can work around this kind of thing. It's just a bit of a pain. So at the same time, the EU is also saying that we are going to catch up and we're going to build data centers and we're going to become the leaders in the AI world. Yikes. So what they want to do is build these gigafactories. So AI gigafactories, basically a gigafactory has it's using 1 gigawatt of energy. So that's why we call it a gigafactory. So they want to build a network of so-called gigafactories to help companies train the most complex models. Those facilities will be equipped with roughly 100,000 of the latest AI chips, so H200 chips from NVIDIA, which is around 4 times more than the number installed in AI factories currently being set up. Well, that's wrong. Okay. We have factories like Colossus, which is xAI's data center, which it was set up initially with 100,000 GPUs. That has increased to, I think, 150,000 H200s, which are the workhorse. Sorry, H100s, which is the workhorse. And then I think they bought another 50,000 H200s. Don't quote me on that, but that was the last figure I saw. So we definitely have factories that have more than 100,000 GPUs. So if the EU are saying we're going to catch up by building factories that have 100,000 GPUs, they're already trying to catch up with what is out of date. So here we go. The European Commission is going to allocate 20 billion euros, so 23 billion US dollars, for the construction of 4 AI gigafactories across the bloc. So each of these factories will have 100,000 GPUs. I don't know what the timeline is for this. It's probably going to be a couple of years, but the problem is these are the size of the factories that are already being deployed. So if the EU takes a couple of years to build these factories, they're building what the Americans are currently using right now. So we have things like Mark Zuckerberg has announced his 2 new factories, Hyperion and what's the name of the other one? Prometheus, I think. They've got very cool names: Colossus, Hyperion, Prometheus, etc., etc. So Hyperion is a 5 gigawatt factory, for example. So it's 5 times the size of the factories that the EU are currently talking about. And the UAE are building a 5 gigawatt factory as well. So the UAE's 5 gigawatt data center project could house up to 2.5 million GPUs spanning 10 square miles. Same with Mark Zuckerberg's one. So Hyperion is expected to be the size of Manhattan. So whilst the EU are playing catch up, the Americans and the Chinese are just going much, much larger. So whatever the EU is going to build in the next couple of years will be today's standard, which will not be enough 2 years from now, because we're going to need much larger arrays. We're going to need much larger data centers. We're going to need much more power to continue to train the models. So again, the EU is making the right noises. They are just 2 or 3 years late. And in the timelines of artificial intelligence, 2 or 3 years is, I mean, it's a lifetime. They're going to be so far behind. I don't know what the fix is there. I don't think there is a fix. Let me just scroll through some questions. Mobrahim X says, are you going to save this live? Yes. So they get saved onto YouTube specifically. The raw file will go into YouTube, and then we edit it, we clean it up so that it is more accessible, and we also cut it into sections. So for example, I've just been talking about the EU for the last 5-10 minutes. That will be its own section with its own video, so it makes it a bit easier to find what it is you are interested in. There's also a newsletter, a free newsletter, which comes out every day, which gives the summary of the last day's live, as well as the time codes and the direct links to the videos. So there's different ways to access the information as well as coming on the live. The main advantage of the live is you can ask questions and I'm able to answer. Books for me says, do you read fiction? Yes, I do. Mainly fantasy, genre fiction, mainly. I used to read a lot more literature, but I decided at a certain point, no, I'm perfectly happy with genre fiction. So right now, I think I'm reading a Peter F. Hamilton book. Graham says, bad regulation will stifle innovation. They may have just killed AI startups in Europe. Yeah, I think that actually happened a while ago. Even with talk of high regulation, even with talk of AI, the AI Act, which doesn't come into play for another 2 weeks, that still added too much risk into the startup ecosystem. So it meant that anyone who was serious about an AI startup went to San Francisco, which means a consolidation of power, consolidation of intellect, consolidation of money, all happening in San Francisco and being pulled out from Europe. So again, I was at this event yesterday, I have my little guest pass at Google, and talking to a lot of AI startups here. And the amount of money that they can raise here, pre-seed rounds tend to be like £1 million or a couple of £1 million, whereas a pre-seed round over in America is 10, 15 million. There's just a lot more money being thrown at the problems. And with AI, money helps. You need money for training. You need money for scaling fast. You need money for marketing. You need cash. So you can't move at the same speed if you start up here in the UK or you start up in Europe, because the investment is just not there. The investment is just not there because we have risks like the AI EU Act, which could just cut the legs out from underneath startups. So Mistral is the biggest kind of homegrown EU AI. They're based in France. They are one of the people who basically said to the EU, you need to push this back. This is going to hamstring us and we're not going to be able to compete anymore. And they're the leading AI company in the EU. And I was in France last week and talking to a bunch of AI engineers and AI startup owners. None of them are using Mistral because it's, well, one, the ChatGPT models are still better. Sorry, Mistral. But two, they were not sure what the future of Mistral was going to be, so they did not want to build on a EU-based platform. It was safer to build using ChatGPT than it was to use Mistral, which is not Mistral's fault. That is the uncertainty that comes from this regulation, which kicks in 2 weeks. So it's a problem, a big problem, and it's kind of, the problem is EU are highly regulating on one side, but also saying we want to be the leader in this. And I don't know how those gel together. I don't think their different divisions are talking much. What do you think of Grok and deregulation in the EU would be to make us more competitive? So I don't think we need to fully deregulate. I think we need to, it needs to be an attractive environment for investors and an attractive environment for startups. And as soon as you have this looming regulation, which has been looming for the last 2 years, and people do not know the impact of it, that adds uncertainty. When you have uncertainty, it's harder to invest, it's harder to build startups, not knowing what's going to happen in literally 2 weeks from now, and how hard the EU is going to come down on AI companies for breaking the act. So because of that uncertainty, companies just leave. You don't. Companies are very mobile now, and there's no reason for them to be located in a particular place, especially if everything's being done in the cloud. So you just move to the US. So I don't think I don't think deregulation is going to help, because what they've done over the last 2 years has created so much uncertainty that the infrastructure and the ecosystem for artificial intelligence startups in the EU has not been built up, which means they are now 2 years behind. They're now talking about building data centers over the next couple of years, which match our data centers from today. So again, they're going to be 2 or 3 years behind. I don't know what the solution is in terms of catching up. I think it's done. I think it's over. And this is fully a 2-horse race between the US and China. So the EU and the UK are out of the race, and there is no way to catch up. Don't want to be pessimistic, but from a realistic point of view, it's done. So I don't, it kind of doesn't matter what they do with the act. It kind of doesn't matter what programs they put forward. They're so far behind in terms of tech, in terms of investment in infrastructure, in terms of talent, that there is no catching up from this, especially if we start to move towards AGI, because whoever gets AGI first, artificial general intelligence, is going to win. Basically, they are going to make so much money that they will become the dominant player in not just AI, but business as a whole, and even broader than that. And we're not going to do it. Not in the EU, not in the UK. Yeah, sorry. I just don't think there's any hope. But thankfully, we can use the AIs from America. So we can use them to build. It's just Europe and the UK are out of the race in terms of building the foundation models and building the base models that everything else is based on. So another interesting article or piece of research that's popped up, this was last week, but there was an academic paper which came out a couple of weeks ago, basically saying, well, the interesting thing here was that it's kind of co-signed by over 40 researchers across multiple competing companies. So OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta, so multiple companies. Their researchers got together and did a paper basically saying there is a very brief window in which we can understand what AI is doing, and that window is about to close, and then it's going to be a fully black box, and we are going to have no idea what's happening inside the AI, which is, I mean, it's inherent to the kind of models we've built. They are a black box, but what we have at the moment is something called chain of thought. In reasoning models in particular, we can actually see what steps the AI is going through. So if you use something like O3, ChatGPT O3, or if you use Cursor for vibe coding, you can see the steps, step by steps. You give a problem to an AI, and it will say, "Oh, okay, Kyle wants me to research the EU AI Act and to see what the potential consequences are on startups in the EU." So that's the problem. And it would say, okay, first I'm going to look up what the AIEU, I don't know why I use this one, I can't say it, AIEU Act is. And then I'm going to research the kind of top thoughts about this, and I'm going to have a look at what startups have said. Basically, it will list all of the things that it is doing in the background. So what we see at the end, what it spits out is our end answer. But with chain of thought, you can actually get an insight into the process. I'm not going to call it the thinking process because that's a very loaded term. It's not actually thinking. But with chain of thought, it can reason through step by step by step by step. And at the moment, that is visible. The thing is, going through the chain of thought process it's a lot more intensive in terms of model usage. So it's using more tokens because it has to it has to write and read more. So a lot more tokens are being used as it thinks out loud. Because of this, it's actually very inefficient, and it costs more money for the AI companies to provide this kind of chain of thought reasoning. So what will probably happen with new models as we move forward is there will be efficiencies, which will be allowing the AI to go through this internal thinking, but not necessarily to use natural language. It doesn't have to write out everything in language that we can read. I'm sure an AI can work out a much faster way to do it, either by creating its own language or using code or something that just is illegible to us and we are not able to read it, we're not able to pass what's going on. That's probably going to be the next stage because that is more efficient, and it will allow these models to perform reasoning much faster without having to explain to us what it's doing at every single step. And what these researchers are saying is we actually should hang on to the chain of thought. We should hang on to the open reasoning so that we can see what these models are doing. Because if we do not, then these are going to become fully black boxes, and we are going to lose control of them entirely. So I think this is a fascinating paper, and it's very interesting that it came from so many different companies at the same time. So OpenAI, DeepMind, the UK AI Security Institute, Anthropic. I'm sure Perplexity is probably in there. Like everybody basically jumped on this paper. 40 authors is a lot of people. But so that's the interesting part. I think though that this is sticking a finger in the levee that's about to break. As soon as one of these companies, OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, works out a model that doesn't need to use chain of thought, works out a model that can reason using kind of internal reasoning rather than having to elucidate, they will go fully into that because it will be cheaper. And ultimately, that's what these companies care about. Yeah, they're going to make noises about openness, the ethics, etc. But if they find a model that is 10 times cheaper, that's what they're going to use, even if it means that we as humans lose any insight into what the model is doing. To be fair, these models are already black boxes. We don't actually know how they do a lot of what they do. We have emergent properties. All we know is that the outputs are pretty good. We don't necessarily know mathematically or scientifically how they get to those outputs. We have a vague idea, but we don't really know. So this paper is a bit of a weird one because it is just kind of admitting, hey, these are black boxes and we're about to lose control of them. Which, yeah, we are. but they are making noises about, hey, maybe we should keep some transparency. But again, the profit motive is going to override. And as soon as somebody finds out how to do this, how to allow AI to reason without that chain of thought, without elucidating all of its steps, they're going to do it because it's going to be so much cheaper for them, and then they make more money. Cool. And let me swing back. Let me pull back. So presume the EU regs don't affect the UK. Is it just lack of investment? So the EU regs will, regulations from the EU AI Act will affect any company that wants to operate in the EU. So that's why, so it's the same with GDPR in a weird way. A lot of companies in the UK and globally will still apply GDPR rules because they want to have access to the EU market. If you want to have access to the EU market, you need to play by those rules. So a lot of people will just hit those levels of GDPR security in order to get access. It's going to be the same with the EU AI Act. If you want to sell, if you want to operate, if you want customers in the EU, you're going to have to play ball. So companies like Meta saying, I'm not going to sign your code of practice, they will still be under the EU AI Act. Well, they're also based in Dublin. They have an EU base as well. But as long as they have users, as long as they have customers who are in the EU, they are going to be subject to regulation. And that's the same globally. So for UK and American companies. How many companies would you say care about being GDPR compliant with ChatGPT? I mean, I mainly talk to startups, and it is not a high priority, especially in the UK. I'm sure in the EU and in Germany, from the German entrepreneurs I know, it would be a much bigger deal. I think most people are focused on just building and trying to work out get product market fit and start getting some revenue in the door, and they will comply with GDPR to the extent that they need to. But it is not it for most entrepreneurs, for most people starting a business, it is a checkbox activity that needs to be done, it needs to be got out of the way, and then you don't think about it, or you try not to think about it as much as possible. It depends where you are, but that tends to be the case in the UK. As I say, our friends in Germany tend to be a bit more strict about it, because in Germany in particular, you can get fined, and you do get fined very, very quickly. Whereas I have never heard of anyone in the UK getting hit by GDPR problems, but your mileage may vary, and it depends how large you are as well. Cool. So I'm going to hop off. That's been about 40 minutes. Again, everything covered in the live is going to be available on YouTube. The YouTube is very slowly growing. I think it's just gone past 2,500 followers. Gosh, it's a grind on YouTube. So if you are interested in this stuff, if you want to learn more about AI and you want a more accessible way to do it via nicely sorted videos, and there's going to be individual videos talking about certain segments, then YouTube is going to be the place to do it. And please subscribe, because it helps me. If you find this useful at all, that really helps me, because this is still an experiment. I've been doing it for 2 or 3 weeks now, but to continue to do it, I kind of need to see that it's working. Otherwise, I will abandon it. So sorry, that sounds like I'm blackmailing you. If you if you find it useful, go and subscribe on YouTube. You don't have to, though. Anyway, I'm going to hop off, and I will see you tomorrow morning, same time, 10 a.m. UK time. Thank you, guys.